The jungle was silent, except for the sound of dry leaves breaking under their boots. The human pushed branches aside as he followed the alien girl, Lyara. Her steps were fast but careful, as if she knew every stone and root hidden under the thick grass. The air was heavy, filled with the smell of wet soil and strange flowers that glowed faintly in the dark. The human had been told there was nothing but ruins in this part of the land, but Lyara's nervous eyes told a different story. She whispered without turning back, "We are close. Do not touch anything when you see it." Her voice trembled, and that made him even more curious. They reached a clearing hidden by vines and tall trees. At first, it looked like a hill of stone covered in moss, but when the human brushed his hand across the surface, the moss fell away and revealed smooth, polished blocks stacked in perfect shape. His breath caught in his chest. It was not a hill at all. It was a pyramid. The sharp edges still stood strong even after centuries of decay. Strange symbols ran across the stones, half buried under vines. They were not human symbols, and yet they were not the same as the alien girl's language either. They looked older, deeper, as if they belonged to something before both species. The human stepped closer. His soldier's instincts told him this was more than just stone. The way it loomed over the clearing felt unnatural. The birds that had been chirping moments ago had gone silent. Even the wind seemed to stop moving, as if the jungle itself was holding its breath. He touched the ground with his palm and felt a faint vibration, like the stones of the pyramid were alive. Lyara grabbed his arm sharply. "Do not go near it." Her voice cracked. She rarely showed fear, but now her pale face betrayed her. "My people call it the silent tomb. Many came here before. None returned. You do not understand. It is forbidden." The human studied her. She was not lying. Her wide eyes and shaking hands proved that. But forbidden places always hid secrets. He had fought in battles where humans were underestimated, mocked, and seen as weak. But he knew curiosity was a weapon too. If this pyramid scared her people, maybe it held something they could not control, something only he could face. He walked a few steps closer, ignoring her plea. The air grew colder. His skin prickled as though invisible eyes were watching him. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the stones, long and sharp even though the sun was high above. He could not explain it, but he felt like the pyramid wanted him to come closer. Lyara shook her head and whispered, "Please, human, stop. The stories say this place was built by the first ones, creatures who lived before us. They lock their power inside. Anyone who tries to open it wakes the dead." She hugged her arms around herself and looked away, as if just speaking those words might bring bad luck. The human tilted his head, scanning the markings on the wall. His hand itched to trace the lines, to know if they meant something. They almost looked like maps or warnings, but written in a language no one alive could understand. The more he stared, the more the symbols seemed to shift, as though the wall itself was moving beneath his gaze. His heart raced, and a shiver ran down his spine, but he could not look away. He crouched low, brushing dirt away from the base of the pyramid. A crack appeared in the stone, a thin line cutting across the smooth surface. It was so straight, so perfect, it could not have been an accident. He leaned closer, feeling heat rising from within the crack, like something inside was waiting to escape. Lyara backed away, her voice breaking into panic. "Stop! If the door opens, we cannot close it again. Do you want to die here?" Her voice echoed against the silent jungle, but the human only stood taller. He turned his head slowly toward her, his eyes burning with curiosity and defiance. "If it is so dangerous, why bring me here at all?" he asked calmly. She froze, unable to answer, because deep down even she wanted to know what secrets the pyramid held. The air thickened, pressing against their chests. The vines around the structure swayed as if pulled by an invisible wind. The human wiped sweat from his brow, but kept staring at the giant steps leading to the top. Every block seemed impossibly heavy, yet perfectly placed, as if created by something far stronger than either of their species. His throat felt dry, but he could not step back. Lyara whispered again, almost to herself. The last time someone touched it, the jungle burned for 3 days. Their screams never ended. She hugged herself tighter, her voice shaking. And when the flames died, nothing remained. Not even ash. The human clenched his fists. He felt the weight of her words, but he also felt something stronger pulling him forward. He had seen war. He had seen planets fall, and he had seen men break in fear. But standing before this pyramid, he realized fear was a wall, and he wanted to break it. He took one step forward, then another, until he was only a breath away from the cold stone surface. Liara's heart pounded so loudly she thought the whole jungle could hear it. She wanted to drag him back to scream, but her legs refused to move. The human reached his hand out, pausing only for a moment. The surface of the pyramid was covered in dust, but beneath it, the stone glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. His fingers hovered just above the surface, the air crackling with unseen energy. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered, "Let's see what you're hiding." Then, slowly, his palm pressed against the ancient stone. The earth rumbled. Birds exploded from the trees in a storm of wings. The vines ripped themselves from the cracks and writhed in the air like snakes. The pyramid glowed brighter and brighter, filling the jungle with blinding light. Liara covered her face with her hands, trembling in terror. The human stood still, his hand pressed against the stone, as the ground beneath them began to split. A low, grinding sound echoed like thunder. The crack at the base widened into a dark line, and the stone shifted. A hidden door slowly began to open. The jungle screamed with noise again, as if the earth itself cried out in warning. And in that moment, Liara realized the human had done what no one else dared. He had awakened the pyramid. The grinding sound from the pyramid did not stop. It echoed through the trees like thunder rolling again and again. Dust fell from the cracks in the giant stones, and the jungle animals that had once been silent now screamed and ran in all directions. Liara pulled at the human's arm, trying to drag him away from the ancient structure. Her hands shook as she shouted, "You don't know what you've done. We must leave before it's too late." The human pulled his arm free and stood his ground. His face was calm, but his heart was racing. He looked at the pyramid with narrowed eyes. Something about it felt alive, like it was breathing with him. The stones glowed faintly, pulsing as if they carried blood instead of dust. His instincts told him this was not just a ruin. It was a door, a secret that had been waiting for him. Liara stepped back, her long hair falling into her face as sweat dripped down her temples. She hugged herself and shook her head. "Do you not hear the stories of my people? This is the silent tomb. It is not meant for us. Long ago, the elders warned us never to come here. We built fences, we marked maps, but still some disobeyed. None of them came back alive." Her voice broke on the last word, and her eyes glistened in the pale light. The human listened, but his curiosity was stronger than her fear. "Stories are just words," he said firmly. "Ruins like this are built for a reason. If no one ever dares to explore, then the truth dies with the past." His words carried weight, not arrogance. He spoke like a man who had lost too much already and could not turn away from answers, no matter how dangerous. Liara's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to argue, to scream at him for his foolish bravery, but deep inside, she knew he was not wrong. She had lived her whole life hearing whispers of the first ones, the ancient builders who were neither human nor alien, beings of power and knowledge who shaped worlds before time remembered. Her people said the pyramid was their prison, or maybe their treasure chest, but no one really knew. The fear had grown larger than the truth. Still, fear had a reason. She took another step forward, her voice softer now, almost a plea. "I once knew a warrior who came here. He was stronger than you. He carried weapons that could break mountains. He swore he would return with riches and glory. Do you know what happened? We found only his sword outside the jungle, burned black, melted like wax. There was no body, no bones, nothing. This place eats those who enter." The human's jaw tightened. He glanced at her with steady eyes. "Then maybe it eats only those who fear it." His words cut deep, but he did not mean them cruelly. They were his truth. He had faced monsters, machines, and wars that should have killed him. If he turned away now, what would he be but another coward hiding behind old tales? The door at the base of the pyramid groaned again, opening wider with a blast of hot air. The ground shook, and vines ripped themselves free from the cracks, writhing like living snakes before falling limp again. The human shielded his face from the dust, but Liara stumbled backward in terror. She looked at him with desperation. "Do you not see? It wakes because of you. You are human, and that is why it answers. This place does not belong to me. It belongs to you. That is why I brought you here. Her confession hung heavy in the air. She had never planned to enter. She only wanted him to see, to prove that her people's fear was real. But now the pyramid was alive again, and she realized the human was the key that had always been missing. The human studied her with sharp eyes. So you knew it would respond to me. Liara bit her lip and looked away. I hoped it would stay silent. I prayed it would reject you, but deep inside I feared this was always meant to happen. Her shoulders trembled. The first ones chose you, your kind. That is why the pyramid has slept for ages, waiting for human hands to wake it. The human clenched his fists, the weight of her words pressed into his chest. Chosen. The word echoed inside his head. He had never believed in destiny, but standing here with the jungle trembling and the pyramid glowing brighter, he felt something stir in his blood. He could not deny it anymore. This place was calling him. Liara fell to her knees, her voice breaking. If you go inside, I cannot follow you. My blood is not welcome here. I will die before the first step. Please, human, turn back. Walk away while you still can. If you cross that door, there is no coming back. Her fear was real, her tears shining in the strange glow of the pyramid. But the human only took a step closer to the opening, his shadow stretching into the darkness within. The air that rushed out of the pyramid smelled of old stone, metal, and something else, something sharp like burning stars. It was not just air. It was power, thick and heavy, pressing against his lungs. He glanced back at her, his voice steady but low. If it is waiting for me, then I cannot turn back. I need to know what's inside. The pyramid's hum grew louder, vibrating through the ground and into their bones. Liara clutched the dirt beneath her fingers and whispered a prayer in her own language, one her people used when death was close. The human stepped forward, and the glow of the opening bathed his face in golden light. The door was wide now, a black tunnel yawning like the mouth of some ancient beast. The jungle around them seemed to bow in silence again. The birds had vanished. The wind held its breath. The trees leaned like they were watching. And in that moment, Liara realized the human had already made his choice. He would enter the tomb that no one dared to enter, no matter what waited inside. The pyramid seemed to respond, as if pleased by his decision. Its symbols pulsed brighter, and the stones sang with a low, rumbling tone. The sound was not just noise, it was words, old and lost. But the human could almost understand them. He shivered as the meaning brushed his mind. Welcome, chosen one. Liara's lips parted in shock. She had not heard the words, but she saw the way his eyes widened, the way his breath caught. She knew then that the pyramid was alive, and it had been waiting centuries for this very moment. And now, nothing would stop it. The human stood at the edge of the pyramid's door, his hand brushing the rough stone. The glow from the symbols spread across the walls like fire racing through dry wood. His heart pounded, but it was not fear that drove it. It was the rush of stepping into something unknown. The air was heavy, pressing against his chest, yet he could not pull back. He placed his palm firmly against the stone surface, and the world seemed to stop. The moment his skin touched the pyramid, the jungle exploded with sound. A roar of wind blasted out of the crack, tearing through the trees, snapping branches, and sending leaves flying into the air. Birds shrieked as they shot into the sky in swarms. The ground beneath his boots trembled, and deep below, a hollow echo rumbled like thunder rolling under the earth. Liara screamed his name, her voice sharp with terror. She stumbled back, shielding her eyes from the blinding light spilling out of the pyramid. She had begged him not to do it, but the human ignored her warnings. Now the impossible was happening before her. The stones moved with grinding groans, ancient gears long hidden now turning as if no time had passed. The crack widened into a dark, yawning mouth. The vines covering the structure curled and snapped away, almost as if the pyramid rejected their grip. Dust filled the air, glowing gold under the strange light that poured out of the open door. The human's body shook with the force of the energy rushing through him. It was not just the vibration of stone. It was inside him, crawling through his veins, humming in his bones. His vision blurred, and for a moment he thought he saw shapes in the light. Tall figures with long arms and glowing eyes. Shadows of beings that were not human, not alien, but something older, more powerful. They stood around him in silence, staring at him like judges at a trial. He blinked, and the vision was gone, but the feeling of being watched did not leave. Liara grabbed his shoulder and pulled with all her strength. "Stop! Let go!" she cried. But when he tried to move, he realized his hand would not lift. It was stuck, held by the stone as if the pyramid itself refused to release him. Panic rushed through him, but only for a second. Then he felt it. The stone was not trapping him. It was reading him. His heartbeat slowed. His mind grew strangely clear, as if thoughts not his own whispered in his ears. Images flashed in his head, a city made of golden towers floating in the sky. Giant ships shaped like wings of light crossing the stars. Then fire, destruction, wars that burned entire worlds. He saw the first ones, the beings who had built this place, fighting, falling, leaving behind ruins. And finally, he saw a hand like his own pressing against the same pyramid stone, centuries ago, opening the same door. The visions vanished, leaving him gasping for breath. The stone let go of his palm. His knees nearly buckled, but he caught himself. The pyramid groaned again, and the door slid fully open, revealing a tunnel descending into darkness. Cold air poured out, carrying with it the smell of old stone, metal, and something strange, like burnt air after lightning. The silence of the jungle returned, broken only by the pounding of Liara's heart as she stared at him. Her voice was barely a whisper. "It chose you." She had feared this moment all her life, yet now that it had come, the truth was undeniable. The pyramid had slept through generations of her people, untouched by their blood, their prayers, their curiosity. But one human touch had awoken it in seconds. Her knees shook as she stepped back, her body caught between awe and dread. The human glanced at her, sweat shining on his forehead. His voice was rough, tired from the visions. "It showed me something. A war. Destruction. This isn't just a tomb. It's a warning." Liara shivered. She looked at the glowing symbols that now spread like veins of fire across the pyramid. The elders said the first ones sealed away their sins. They built prisons, not temples. You should not go inside. Her words carried fear, but also a desperate hope that he would listen. But the human's eyes were locked on the tunnel. The darkness inside was not just shadow, it was alive, pulsing, waiting. Something inside called to him. It was like a voice without sound, tugging at his very blood. He could not ignore it, no matter how much danger it promised. He stepped forward, his boot crunching on the stone floor of the entrance. The moment he crossed the threshold, the glow behind him dimmed, as though the pyramid had closed its attention around him. Liara gasped, clutching her chest. She could not follow him. She knew it. Her body would fail the moment she stepped in. But she could not abandon him either. She stopped at the edge, her trembling fingers reaching out but unable to cross the line. "Human," she said, her voice trembling but steady enough to carry across the roar of silence. "If you enter, you carry not just your fate, but mine too. Whatever you wake inside will not stop at you. It will come for us all." He paused, his figure half lit by the golden glow and half consumed by the dark tunnel. He turned his head slightly toward her, his expression unreadable. "Then maybe it's time we know what hunts us. Better to face it now than let it rot in the dark." The pyramid answered his words with a deep hum, vibrating through the stone under their feet. The tunnel seemed to sigh, breathing him in. Dust fell like rain from the ceiling as the walls shifted slightly, adjusting as though welcoming its guest. Liara's eyes filled with tears, but she stayed rooted at the edge, powerless to stop him. He raised his hand, tracing the air as if feeling invisible threads guiding him forward. His shadow stretched long into the tunnel, swallowed slowly by the waiting dark. The air inside was colder, sharper, each breath like swallowing ice. But he kept moving. With every step, the hum grew louder, until it matched the rhythm of his own heart. Behind him, Liara whispered a final prayer. She knew nothing she said could change his path now. The human had touched the pyramid, and it had opened for him alone. Whatever lay beyond that door was his to face. And as the light dimmed and the darkness consumed him, the jungle outside seemed to know that nothing would ever be the same again. The tunnel swallowed the human whole as he stepped deeper inside. The light from the opening behind him grew weaker with every step, until it was no more than a faint golden glow at his back. Ahead, only darkness stretched on. His boots echoed against the stone floor, each sound magnified, bouncing back from the unseen walls. The air was colder here, sharp and heavy, as though the pyramid itself exhaled around him. His breath fogged in the air, and he tightened his grip on the small torch he carried. The torch's beam cut a thin line through the dark, revealing walls close on both sides. They were covered in carvings, deep and sharp, glowing faintly as if the stone remembered fire. Strange shapes twisted across them, creatures with long limbs and eyes like stars, battles fought in the skies, cities falling in flames. The human ran his fingers lightly over the carvings, and for a moment he swore they pulsed with warmth, as though alive under the stone. Behind him, Liara's voice called faintly from the entrance, her words weak with fear. "Do not go further. Please, human. The air inside is cursed." But he could not stop. The further he went, the stronger the pull became. It was as though invisible hands guided him forward, deeper into the heart of the pyramid. The hum he had felt outside grew louder here. It was not just sound, it was vibration. It shook in his chest, matched his heartbeat, and crawled through his veins. The deeper he walked, the more it felt like he was being welcomed, like the pyramid had waited centuries for his steps. Liara had been right. This place belonged to him in a way she could never explain. Then he heard it. A low whisper, not from behind, not from ahead, but inside his own skull. It spoke no language he knew, yet he understood the meaning. Closer, closer. The voice was soft, neither male nor female, ancient yet alive. He stopped, his torch trembling in his hand. Sweat rolled down his forehead, despite the cold. He turned sharply to check the darkness around him, but nothing moved. The tunnel was empty except for him. Still, the whisper lingered, like breath against his ear. The ground shifted suddenly. Dust rained down from above, and cracks groaned in the ceiling. The human stumbled, but caught himself, shining his torch upward. For a second, he thought he saw eyes in the ceiling, dozens of them glowing faintly before fading back into the stone. He tightened his jaw, refusing to show fear, though his stomach twisted with unease. He knew the pyramid was testing him, watching how far he would go before breaking. The tunnel turned sharply, and before him stretched a long stairway carved from black stone. Each step seemed deeper than the last, leading further into the pyramid's core. Strange symbols glowed along the sides of the stairs, shifting when he looked too long, as though they did not want to be understood. The human inhaled deeply, then placed his foot on the first step. The hum grew louder, shaking the air like the beat of a great drum. As he descended, the cold became unbearable. His breath froze in thin white clouds, his fingers numbed, and yet sweat poured from his skin. His chest ached, his heart hammering harder with each step. It was as if the pyramid pressed against his body, testing whether he was strong enough to keep walking. He gritted his teeth and pushed forward, one step at a time, refusing to yield. At the bottom of the stairway, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber. His torchlight spread across it, revealing towering columns that stretched into darkness above. The walls glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with the hum that now shook his very bones. At the center of the chamber was a massive structure, a block of stone shaped like an altar or throne. Above it floated a faint light, like a burning star trapped in midair. The human froze, his breath caught in his throat. The whisper returned, stronger now, echoing inside his skull. "You are here." At last. He staggered slightly, pressing a hand to his head, but the words would not stop. They sank into his mind, ancient and commanding. He felt his knees weaken, but he forced himself to stay upright. Liara's voice reached him faintly again, far away from the entrance. "What do you see? What is inside?" He did not answer. He could not. The weight of the chamber pressed on him too heavily. Every bone in his body screamed that he should run, yet his blood told him to step closer. He walked toward the floating light, each step slow and heavy, as though the air itself tried to pin him down. When he reached the altar, he extended his hand. The light pulsed brighter, its glow spreading across the chamber. For a moment, he saw flashes, faces staring at him from the dark, tall figures with glowing eyes, their mouths open in silent screams. He jerked his hand back, his breath ragged. The visions vanished, but the sense of being surrounded did not. The chamber felt full, alive with the presence of the dead. The hum rose into a roar, the sound shaking the floor. The columns groaned, dust falling in waves. The light flared violently, and with it came another vision. He saw worlds burning, ships of light falling in flames, and beings like shadows tearing across the sky. A war of gods, endless and merciless. He saw them sealing something away inside the pyramid, their faces desperate, their hands glowing as they locked the door. Then silence. The human fell to his knees, gasping for air. His head pounded with the force of the vision, but he understood now. The pyramid was not a tomb. It was a prison. Something had been locked here long ago, something the first ones could not destroy. And his touch had opened the door. The whisper filled his mind one last time, louder and sharper than before. You are mine now. He snapped his head up, his eyes wide with shock. The floating light pulsed like a heartbeat, reaching out toward him. His hand lifted on its own, trembling, fighting to resist. Behind him, faint at the entrance, Liara screamed his name again. Her voice full of terror. The human's hand hovered inches from the light, the hum shaking every stone in the chamber. His mind screamed at him to pull back, but his blood, his bones, everything inside him told him this was only the beginning. The human's hand trembled as it hovered near the floating light above the stone altar. The glow pulsed like a living heart, each beat stronger than the last. He felt a pull in his chest, as if invisible threads were wrapping around his body, dragging him forward. His breath grew shallow, his legs heavy, yet he could not force himself to turn away. His blood rushed in his ears, louder than the hum of the chamber, and for a moment he thought his own heart was beating in time with the light. Then, with a sudden burst, the glow stretched out, tendrils of golden fire snapping toward him. He flinched and stumbled back, raising his arms to protect himself, but instead of burning him, the tendrils whipped past and struck the walls. A loud crack echoed as hidden panels slid open, revealing long, sharp holes. A second later, the hiss of ancient machinery filled the air. From both sides of the chamber, arrows of pure metal shot forward with deadly speed, faster than any weapon he had ever seen. The human dove to the ground, rolling across the cold stone as an arrow sliced through the space where his head had just been. The sharp tip buried itself deep into a pillar, sparking as it struck. Another arrow whizzed past, tearing the sleeve of his jacket. The chamber had awoken its defenses, and the human realized with a hard swallow. This was not just a prison. It was a trap. He scrambled to his feet, ducking low as more arrows shot from the walls. They were relentless, striking in perfect patterns, designed to kill intruders without mercy. His mind raced. He could not fight stone and steel, but he could think faster. Watching the rhythm of the arrows, he spotted the brief pauses between each strike. Timing would be his only weapon. Behind him, Liara's panicked voice echoed faintly from the tunnel. "What is happening? Tell me!" Her cries were distant, weak. The barrier of the pyramid kept her out, but she could hear the chaos. The human didn't answer. He didn't have time. He waited for the pause, then sprinted forward, weaving through the deadly rain. One arrow grazed his leg, burning a line of pain into his flesh, but he did not slow. His eyes locked on the altar in the center. Something told him the only way to stop the trap was there. He reached the block of stone, throwing himself behind it for cover. The arrows clanged against the altar, sparks flying in every direction. His chest heaved as he caught his breath. The glow above pulsed faster now, like it fed on the danger, on the blood it wanted spilled. He pressed his back to the cold stone and clenched his fists. For a moment, the barrage stopped. The chamber fell into silence, broken only by the sound of his ragged breathing. Slowly, he peeked out from behind the altar, but the moment he did, the floor beneath him shifted. The stone cracked open and sharp spikes shot upward, narrowly missing his feet as he leapt back. His heart slammed in his chest. Every surface here wanted him dead. Still, he refused to run. Gritting his teeth, he scanned the altar. The carvings etched into its surface glowed faintly, forming a pattern, a sequence like a puzzle. His mind raced. The visions he had seen earlier, the wars, the beings sealing away their enemy. Maybe this was their way of locking it, of testing anyone who tried to enter. If he solved the puzzle, the traps might stop. He pressed his hand to the glowing carvings. They shifted under his touch, like liquid stone, rearranging themselves into different shapes. He recognized some of them, symbols from the tunnel walls. But here, they formed broken pieces of a whole. Quickly, he dragged his torch closer to the altar, using its weak light to study the symbols. His fingers moved over the shapes, pressing, sliding, matching them into place. The hum in the chamber grew louder, angry, as if the pyramid resisted his attempt. The arrows fired again, forcing him to duck low. One scraped across his shoulder, blood dripping hot down his arm. Pain flared, but he pushed through it, ignoring everything except the puzzle before him. His mind worked faster than his fear, piecing the glowing fragments together until finally the shapes aligned into a circle. The instant the circle closed, the chamber shook violently. The arrows stopped, the spikes sank back into the floor. The hum softened, turning into a slow, steady beat. The human fell to his knees, gripping the edge of the altar for support. His body ached, blood stained his clothes, but he was alive. He raised his head slowly, staring at the floating light. It had changed. The golden glow dimmed, replaced by a deep crimson, like blood dripping into water. The voice returned in his skull, stronger now. You are worthy, but not ready. The words sent shivers down his spine. He tried to move, but his body was locked in place, as if invisible chains wrapped around him. His head pounded, visions flooding his mind once again. This time, he saw not just the first ones, but their enemy. A creature of shadows, its body vast and formless, its eyes burning like suns. It moved across the stars, swallowing entire worlds. The first ones fought it, thousands of them, but they fell one by one. Desperate, they trapped it in pieces, scattering prisons across galaxies. And here, in this pyramid, was one of those prisons. The shadow was inside, waiting to be freed. The vision ended, leaving him gasping. He collapsed against the altar, his hands trembling. He understood now why Lyara's people had feared this place. It did not just hold secrets. It held danger so great that even gods had locked it away. And now, by touching the pyramid, he had awoken its memory. Lyara's voice echoed faintly again, filled with panic. Human, answer me. Are you alive? Her voice cut through the silence like a lifeline, but he could not bring himself to speak. His throat was dry, his body heavy, and his mind still spinning from the visions. He looked once more at the crimson light. It pulsed slowly, as though it was breathing. He knew this was only the beginning. The pyramid had tested him, and though he had survived, something darker now stirred within its walls. Something that wanted to be free. The human clenched his fists, forcing himself to stand, ignoring the pain in his leg and shoulder. He whispered into the chamber, his voice hoarse but steady. If you want me, you'll have to fight for me. The light pulsed brighter, almost in answer, and the ground shook again. He staggered, but did not fall. Behind him, at the entrance, Lyara could only stare at the glowing walls, fear tightening her chest. She did not know what trial the human had faced inside, but she felt it in her bones. Whatever was locked in the pyramid was not dead. It was awake, and it had noticed him. The chamber was silent after the traps ended, but it was not a peaceful silence. It was the kind of silence that pressed against the ears, heavy and unnatural, like the air was waiting. The human stood unsteady, blood dripping from his shoulder and leg, his torchlight shaking in his grip. The altar behind him still glowed faintly, but the floating orb above it had changed. Its golden light was gone, replaced by a deep, dark glow, red like fire smoldering under ash. It pulsed slowly, in rhythm with his heartbeat, as though it had connected itself to him. The human wiped sweat from his brow, his chest rising and falling in ragged breaths. His body screamed to stop, but his mind pulled him forward. He felt no choice now. He had survived the traps, solved the puzzle, and seen the visions of the war. The pyramid would not allow him to walk away. Whatever secret lay within, it wanted him to face it. He turned his eyes to the walls of the chamber. Symbols carved deep into the stone began to glow with the same crimson light as the orb. They moved, shifting across the walls like liquid fire, forming shapes and images. He saw creatures that looked like shadows stretching across stars, burning planets in their path. He saw warriors of light, tall and strong, falling under the weight of endless darkness. And then he saw the pyramid itself being sealed by hundreds of hands glowing with desperate power. The last image froze, a single figure with a human-like shape standing before the door, hand pressed against the stone, as if locking it for eternity. His stomach tightened. That figure looked too much like him. The orb pulsed harder, the crimson glow filling the chamber. The whisper returned, louder, stronger, vibrating in his skull. You are chosen. You carry the blood. Unlock the prison. Free what waits inside. His jaw clenched. He shook his head sharply, whispering through gritted teeth, No, I saw what you are. You bring only destruction. The voice hissed, like fire rushing through cracks. Destruction is freedom. Destruction is truth. You cannot resist. His knees weakened under the weight of the words, but he forced himself to stay standing. He staggered closer to the altar, planting both hands on its cold surface. The stone burned under his touch, glowing brighter with each breath he took. He felt it pulling at him, searching inside his body for something buried deep. His vision blurred again, and for a moment he saw himself, but not as he was. He saw himself standing in armor of fire, holding a blade of light, armies bowing before him. Then the vision shifted, and he saw the same self kneeling in chains, his body broken, the shadow standing over him. The human gasped and jerked his hands away, stumbling back. His chest felt like it was splitting open. He shouted into the empty chamber, his voice echoing. "What do you want from me?" The orb pulsed, and the voice returned. "You are the key. Your kind was made to open the locks. Without you, we sleep. With you, we rise again." His eyes widened as the truth hit him. The first ones had not only built prisons, they had built them with a failsafe. They had tied their locks to human blood, human touch. It was not random that he could enter where Liara could not. It was by design. His species was the tool to decide the prison's fate. Behind him, he faintly heard Liara shouting his name again, her voice strained and broken. She must have seen the glow spilling from the chamber into the tunnel. He knew she was terrified, but he could not answer her now. The pyramid demanded every piece of his attention. The orb lowered slowly, drifting down until it hovered just above the altar, glowing brighter. The hum in the chamber grew louder, shaking dust from the ceiling, rattling the stone under his boots. He braced himself, his fists clenched, refusing to be swallowed by the fear pressing into his chest. Suddenly, the orb split open with a crack like thunder. Light spilled out, not golden, not crimson, but a deep black that twisted like smoke. The temperature dropped sharply. The human's breath froze in front of him. The shadow spilled from the orb, swirling through the air, filling the chamber with thick, choking darkness. From the smoke, shapes began to form. Long arms, sharp claws, eyes glowing red like molten stone. The shadow towered, shifting and stretching, never holding one shape for long. It leaned close to him, its voice now not just in his head, but vibrating in the chamber itself. "Release me. Break the chains. Together, we will rule what remains." The human's pulse raced. He could feel the pull, the temptation. The visions of himself as a warrior returned, clearer this time, stronger. He saw himself leading armies across worlds, holding the power of gods in his hands. For a moment, his knees nearly bent. For a moment, he wanted it. But then Liara's voice rang again, louder this time, filled with raw fear. "Human, fight it! Do not let it take you!" Her words cut through the haze, dragging him back. He closed his eyes tight, forcing the visions away. When he opened them again, he glared at the shadow with steady defiance. "I am not your key. I am not your servant." The shadow hissed, shaking the walls, cracks splitting along the stone floor. The ceiling dripped dust as though ready to collapse. You cannot resist forever. The lock is open. The chain is weak. Sooner or later, you will give in. The human stepped back, breathing heavily. His torch flickered weakly against the suffocating dark. He knew the shadow was right about one thing. The prison was weak now. His touch had started something that could not be undone. But he also knew one more truth. It had chosen the wrong human. He turned away from the altar, stumbling back toward the tunnel. Every step felt like dragging his body through mud, but he kept moving. The shadow's whispers clawed at his mind, promising power, begging release, cursing his defiance. Still, he pushed forward, his eyes fixed on the faint glow of the tunnel where Liara waited. When he reached the edge of the chamber, he glanced back one last time. The shadow swirled violently around the altar, its red eyes burning in the dark. The orb flickered, unstable, its glow pulsing like a dying heart. The chamber shook, but the prison held. For now. He turned back and staggered up the steps, his legs weak but his will unbroken. Liara's face came into view, pale and full of tears, but her eyes lit with relief when she saw him. She reached out, pulling him across the threshold with trembling hands. The moment he crossed the line into the tunnel, the glow dimmed behind him. The hum faded, leaving only silence again. The door of the pyramid groaned, slowly sliding shut, sealing the chamber once more. The human collapsed to his knees, gasping for air, his body shaking. Liara dropped beside him, clutching his arm. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "What did you see?" He stared at the stone floor, his eyes haunted. His voice was low, almost broken. Not a tomb, A prison, and it's still alive. The jungle was still shaking as the stone door of the pyramid closed behind them with a deep grinding sound. The human collapsed onto the ground, his palms pressed to the dirt, breathing hard. His body burned from cuts and bruises, and his clothes were torn, but his eyes were wide and alert, haunted by what he had just faced. Liara knelt beside him, her hands trembling as she touched his arm. She wanted to speak, but no words came. The silence between them was heavy, broken only by his ragged breaths and the faint rumble of the pyramid settling back into its ancient rest. He finally raised his head, staring at the structure looming over them. The vines and moss had already begun to creep back across its surface, as though trying to hide it again. But the glow remained, faint and red, seeping from cracks in the stone. The human clenched his jaw, his thoughts racing. He had seen the shadow. He had felt its whispers crawl into his mind. It was not dead. It was waiting. Liara finally found her voice. "What happened inside? Tell me." Her words cracked as if she feared the answer. He swallowed hard, then spoke in a low voice. "It wasn't a tomb. It wasn't a temple. It was a prison. They locked something inside, something too powerful to destroy. And when I touched it, I woke it." His voice carried no pride, only the heavy weight of truth. Liara's face turned pale. Her worst fear had become real. She hugged her arms tightly around herself, her eyes fixed on the faint red glow. "The stories were true then," she whispered. "The first ones sealed their greatest enemy here, and now it knows you." The human turned his gaze to her, his eyes hard but calm. "It called me the key. It wanted me to break its chains, but I didn't." Her lips trembled. "Not today, but it will not stop. You have touched it. You carry its mark now. Wherever you go, it will follow." She reached for his hand, gripping it tightly as though to keep him anchored in the present. Her touch was warm, alive, in contrast to the cold that still clung to his skin. He stared at their joined hands for a moment, then back at the pyramid. His mind replayed the visions, the wars of the first ones, the endless darkness spreading across stars, the figure that looked like him sealing the door. He felt a strange mix of fear and duty. Maybe he had been chosen not to free the shadow, but to fight it. The ground beneath them rumbled again, faint but real. The jungle birds burst into the air in a storm of wings, their cries sharp and frightened. The human stood, ignoring the pain in his body, his eyes locked on the pyramid. "It's not over," he said firmly. "That thing is awake now. It will try again, and I can't let it win." Liara stood too, her expression torn between fear and admiration. "But how can you fight something that even the first ones could not destroy?" He looked at her, his gaze steady. "Maybe they couldn't, but they built this prison for a reason. They left the key in human blood for a reason. Maybe they knew one day someone like me would have to face it. I don't know why, but it chose me. And if it chose me, then I'll fight it, even if it kills me." His words were simple, but they carried the weight of iron. Liara felt her heart tighten. He was just one human, fragile compared to the power she had seen in the visions. Yet, he stood unshaken. His courage was something she had never witnessed before. For the first time, she believed her people might have been wrong about humans. Maybe they were not weak. Maybe they were the only ones capable of facing the darkness. The pyramid gave one last groan before falling silent again. The glow dimmed further, though not completely. It was like an eye half closing, still watching, still waiting. The human knew it was not finished. He had bought time, nothing more. Liara moved closer, her voice softer now, almost gentle. "You cannot do this alone. If you fight it, you will need help. My people will not believe me, but I will stand with you." He looked at her, the faintest smile pulling at the corner of his lips despite the pain on his face. "Then we fight together." The jungle wind picked up again, rustling the leaves, carrying the smell of wet earth and dust. The human pulled his torn jacket tighter and turned away from the pyramid. Every step he took felt heavier, as if the shadow's whispers still tried to drag him back. But with Liara beside him, his resolve hardened. He would not let the darkness win. As they walked away, he glanced one last time over his shoulder. The pyramid stood silent, but the red cracks still glowed faintly in the fading light of day. He knew it was only a matter of time before the shadow would try to break free again. The first ones had delayed it. He had delayed it, but sooner or later, the final battle would come. Liara followed his gaze, her voice barely above a whisper. "If it escapes, it will not just destroy this world. It will burn the stars themselves. The human tightened his fists, his eyes narrowing. Then I'll be ready when it does. They disappeared into the thick jungle, their figures swallowed by the trees. Behind them, the pyramid stood like a sleeping beast, patient and hungry, its faint red glow a reminder that the war of the first ones was not finished. And in its silence, a whisper echoed in the human's mind one last time, softer than breath, but sharp enough to cut through his soul. Soon. He did not flinch. He only walked faster, his jaw set, carrying with him the weight of destiny he had not asked for, but would never run from. For the first time, Liara saw the truth in his eyes. Humans were not weak. They were the last wall between light and endless darkness. And this human, broken and bleeding but unshaken, had just declared war on the shadow itself.